Hey, what up YouTube? Welcome back to a new video, and this time I think the audio is working. We are back with my score predictions for this week. We've got some EFL Cup games, which are looking really exciting, some EFL Trophy games, some local derbies getting involved in Derbyshire, Lancashire, Yorkshire. We've also got some few tasty fixtures in League One, which are already early doors looking like relegation and promotion deciders. So much to get into and unpack. Let's start with the Premier League. Tonight, we have Leeds United versus West Ham United. We know both of these two teams are in a bit of a pickle right now, so to speak. Both are embroiled, it seems, in a relegation battle. Leeds currently sitting 3 points above relegation zone. West Ham 3 points off safety. 4 points separating these two sides. I can't call this. I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw. We have a Roses sort of game, where the War of Roses, Preston North End versus Sheffield United as well in the Championship tonight. More interestingly, probably, is Paul Heckingbottom is, I believe, still the manager of Preston North End. I'm just checking. Yes, and he used to be manager of Sheffield United for a couple of years. So this is obviously a very interesting game with Heckingbottom wanting to get one over on his old club. And they are arguably the much better side at the moment, Preston, having until I think the midweek and inhabited the playoffs positions. They have now dropped down to 11th after a couple of losses, and Sheffield United got back-to-back wins, and I think this is where they're really now starting to come into the fore, back under Chris Wilder. And I think the Blades will win this one. 2-0. They're starting to get into form. They've had a slow start to the season, but I think we may see a proper romping up now. On to the Saturday games. Tomorrow we've got Chelsea versus Sunderland, and we do know that Sunderland have done a decent job so far this season, being really competitive, currently 7th. Chelsea are in 5th. I do suspect, they're on the same points, but I do suspect that Chelsea are going to win this one quite comfortably. I think Sunderland's start to the season just can't be maintained. They've scored 9 goals, which would place them roughly in mid-table. It's not the sort of long-lasting impact. It's their defence, which is the best. It's the joint second best alongside Manchester City in the Premier League. I'm going to go 5-1, though, to Chelsea. I just think it's going to be one of them days. But I could be proved very wrong. Newcastle United versus Fulham at St James's Park. Much of muchness between these two teams. Not too much either way. I think Newcastle tend to keep things quite tight at the back. Fulham don't really. But yeah, they're up. There's 1 point separating these two teams. Fulham are on a bit of a bad run of form, but I do think they're going to get a win here. 2-1 to Fulham. It is interesting how every single time Newcastle seem to be in Europe, they then struggle in the league. I wonder if there's any correlation with that. Manchester United versus Brighton Hove Albion. Also two teams that are much alike in current positioning. 1 point again separating them in 9th and 10th. Brighton have scored 12 and conceded 11. Manchester United have scored 11 and conceded 12. So really hard one to say based on that. But I'm going to go with a 3-1 Brighton because we know Man United are a completely unpredictable wild beast at times. Brentford versus Liverpool. We know Liverpool have had a bit of a poor and a form of late, losing last 3 games on the bounce. They're going to really want to put this run of form behind them, and where better to do it than up against a Brentford side, which is a bit inconsistent, shall we say. I'm going to go 2-0 Liverpool here. On to the Championship, got Coventry City versus Watford. How many ways can we describe how good Coventry City are at the moment? Currently invincible in the opening 11 games, have won the last 5 games in a row. Nothing looking like they're stopping them right now. And I don't think Watford is really going to provide much of an obstacle to them. 2-1 to Frank Lampard's Coventry City, as they are formally called, of course. You automatically get that if you have Frank Lampard as a manager. It just tends to be the case for whatever reason. I can't think why. Maybe something to do with him being a very famous player in the past. Ipswich Town versus West Bromwich Albion. Both of these teams would probably have aspirations of playoffs. West Brom only a point off it. Ipswich's last couple of losses have now put them 5 points away from the playoffs and comfortably in mid-table in 14th. However, I would say the underlying stats for Ipswich would maybe imply that they should be a bit higher up the table, scoring 16, conceding 13. The goal difference would sort of put them up in that sort of playoff mix. But yeah, again, a lack of consistency in this one. And at Portman Road, I think we're going to see a 2-2 draw. I can't really tell you which one will come out as winners that one. Stoke are another side that are doing quite well, although they have faded a bit from that early start for glory and now sitting 6th. But they're still a decent side, and they're travelling to Fratton Park and Portsmouth. Now, we know Fratton Park can be a bit of a home fortress for the Hampshire-based side. But at the same time, Stoke are tricky customers. I am going to go, though, home advantage. I think Portsmouth head of this one out. 3-1 to Pompey. On to Blackburn versus Southampton. Both of these are early season looking more in danger in the relegation fight than anything. I think Southampton have got a bit more quality to probably avoid that in a moment. Blackburn certainly do not. They have not won a single game in the last 5 games. And if it wasn't for Sheffield Wednesday being given a points deduction now, I must say, I will come to that later. But it's not looking great, shall we say. I'm going to go with a 0-0 draw in this one. I really couldn't tell you which side would be winner. Maybe Southampton, just considering that they're slightly better in the league. Bristol City versus Birmingham City. Bristol have done a decent job. They are currently 4th, proving that it's much more than Liam Manning, who is the person who was responsible for Bristol's success, as they've arguably done better since he's left even. Birmingham, a lot of people had a lot of high hopes for. They're very much a side in almost slap bang in mid-table in 13th. Think they're just incredibly inconsistent and hard to predict. I am going to go with a Birmingham win because I think on paper their side is better, and I'm going to go 2-0 to Birmingham City. Both of these teams are absolutely full of former Derby County players as well. I think we're going to see all the Derby Academy graduates maybe in action. We've got Max Bird, Jason Knight, Erin Cashin. We've got Christian Bielik, who didn't come from our academy, but we got him when he was fairly young as well. So yeah, a lot of ex-Derby in this one. On to Derby County versus Queen's Park Rangers. Derby finally got a win against Norwich in midweek at home. I am so happy because it's been so long. We've had so many draws. We were pretty dire against Oxford and Gary Rowett. And finally, is this the tone of optimism? It was only a 1-0, but it could mark a change in direction. Queen's Park Rangers, we know, are doing quite well at the moment. They're out of the playoffs on goal difference. But I'm just got optimism right now. At home, I think we can do this. 2-0. Come on, you Rams. Hull City versus Charlton Athletic. Arguably two of the sides I would suspect the least to be in the competition for the playoffs at the moment, with both of them on 18 points. Charlton in 5th, Hull in 7th. Really strong start to both of these two teams. Hull on a better run of form at the moment, unbeaten in the last 4 as compared to Charlton, who've won the last 2 but lost before that. I think at home, Hull could get the win here. 2-0 to Hull City. but I must commend both of these teams for doing a fantastic job. Hull need to stop conceding, though. That is going to be a problem in the long run. But as long as they can keep on outscoring the opponent, then maybe that doesn't matter. Middlesbrough versus Wrexham. Another really strong team is Middlesbrough, who've only lost once this season, and that was the third game from now. So they had 2 wins since that loss and clearly didn't linger on it too long. They're up against a Wrexham side, very mid-table in 15th. It was always going to be, I think, for me, a bit of a transition season for Wrexham. It's hard coming up from League One to the Championship. Suddenly your whole perceptions on everything changes. And I think at home, Middlesbrough win this one 2-0. Millwall versus Leicester City. Millwall, another strong team, won the last 3 games in a row. They're 4 points off the automatic places. They are certainly a side that I was a bit surprised at doing so well. I would have put them around about the 8th position. I think in terms of goal scores, that is a concern, only scoring 13 and conceding 13. They're very much an inconsistent side. I don't know if they have that longevity to be able to maintain the performances they are at the moment. And we're talking about Leicester, who are draw specialists, it seems. They have drawn 5 games so far this season, joint second with Derby and just behind Southampton in that one. And it's getting them points. If they can convert them draws to wins, then they suddenly look a lot better. But I'm going to go at the Den, Millwall to win this one by a 1-0. They're on such a good run of form at the moment. I can't see them stumbling up against even a strong Leicester side. Sheffield Wednesday versus Oxford United. So obviously we got the news just before we came on that Sheffield Wednesday have been placed into administration and therefore an immediate 12 points deduction, which makes their job even harder than what it was before to get out of the mess. I will say there's one silver lining in this, and it's hard to say. As someone who is a hardcore Derby fan, we have been there with administration. In fact, we had it even worse, arguably, than Sheffield Wednesday in terms of points deductions and the difficulty to surmount that. And the one relief is that Chansiri is no longer responsible for the day-to-day practices of the club. Now, Sheffield Wednesday, we hear time after time, is a huge club. And that is absolutely the case, right? They've got a huge fan base. They've got a absolutely massive following, and arguably, you've got to say that there's some like fairly famous Wednesday supporters out there as well. Maybe, just looking at some of these. There could be a coalition. I'm going to look at the Sheffield Star in terms of, there's a thing here about who some of the most famous people are. You've got Alex Turner of the Arctic Monkeys. You got Rick Savage of Def Leppard. There could be an interesting music one there, couldn't there? Gary Cahill, yeah, he's not going to pay. Unfortunately, a lot of these probably don't quite have the net worth to be able to get them out of trouble, which is part of the issue. But I think there will be somebody, maybe even an American or something, but you will get through this. Don't worry, Sheffield Wednesday fans, on that one. But it's such a killer blow, and I think Oxford will therefore win this one. 1-0. I wish the best for Sheffield Wednesday. Brighter times will hopefully come. I do suspect that Sheffield Wednesday will get brought out. I don't know by who, but there's always people after Championship clubs at the moment, it seems. Whether their intentions are right or not, that is another question, and that is for the EFL fit and proper test, which is not fit and proper at all to adjudicate. So moving on to Swansea City versus Norwich, which is the last one in the Championship. Norwich are really struggling. You would suspect that maybe Liam Manning's time at Norwich is sort of numbered at this point. They're in the relegation zone, which is not really where anybody would expect Norwich to be. They have been obviously unfortunate with injuries, if you have been a close follower on Norwich. But I think if they do lose against Swansea, I would have to say that Liam Manning has to go, because for Norwich to be in the relegation zone, it's daft. It really is. And they're up against the Swansea side, which are very inconsistent, mid-table in 16th. Having lost against Derby, if they lose again against Swansea, it builds a really bad pattern, because they lost 3-1 against Ipswich, 1-0 against Bristol City, which is a decent side, and then 1-0 against Derby. They've been close in a few games, but you can't just be close. You need to win. And unfortunately, I do think Swansea will win this one 1-0. And I think that might have to end the time for Liam Manning to be in charge. And we may see another championship casualty. On to League One. Bolton Wanderers versus Cardiff City. An interesting one, because both of these teams are arguably much bigger than League One, but Bolton have been here a while now. Now, there's 6 points separating them. Cardiff at the top of the league. Bolton just outside the playoffs by 4 points, though. I do have a sneaky suspicion, though, that Bolton will edge this one out. I can't quite tell you why, but I think a 2-0 win for Bolton Wanderers is the likely case. We know Bolton have a tendency to be a bit hit and miss, but Steven Schumacher is a decent manager at this level. He got promoted with Plymouth, I think it was, a few seasons back. Mansfield Town versus Wigan Athletic. Onto another North Greater Manchester club in Wigan, who are equally giants of the game, but they are very much mid-table and haven't looked really much like getting promoted any of the time since they've slumped back into League One football. They're up against a Mansfield side who are 9th. They're decent. They're run by Nigel Clough. And yeah, I'm going with a 0-0 draw in this one at Mansfield's ground. I can't pick a winner per se. AFC Wimbledon versus Burton Albion. AFC Wimbledon, top notch of late. Unbeaten in 6, maybe 7. I think it's 6, though. And on a real storming. They're currently 1 point off at the top of the league. Really strong looking outfit. Whereas Burton, completely the opposite. They're 1 point off safety. They're in relegation zone, which quite predictable position to be in. But we know Burton like to rumble and ruffle a few feathers in this. And I think a 1-1 draw is going to be the outcome in this game. Barnsley versus Rotherham United. Rotherham are slowly turning it around. They've been unbeaten in the last 3 now, which have taken them out of a relegation zone. However, they've still been quite poor this season. Barnsley haven't won in the last 4 and will be looking for a win in this South Yorkshire derby. It's a proper fierce rivalry, this one. And I do think home advantage, Barnsley just being the better side overall. 2-1 to Barnsley. Leyton Orient versus Lincoln City. Well, Lincoln are in the playoffs and are justifying a reason to say that they're dark horses, which I have said historically. I think even in the predictions video, I said that they may prove to be dark horses this season. But a Leyton Orient side that did decent last season. They've not been as good this season, but they tend to be quite high scoring. I think this is going to be a really end-to-end game. A 3-2 win for Leyton Orient will go home advantage, but a proper ding-dong-do in terms of performance based on the pitch. Northampton Town versus Luton Town. Not too much distance covered for these two teams, actually, and not too much in the table either of a point apart. But a lot of positions-wise, Northampton 11th, Luton in 15th, just showing how close that mid-table pack is at the moment, isn't it? Northampton had a really decent spell a few weeks ago, and that sort of slowed down a bit now, and they're a bit more inconsistent. Luton haven't looked consistent since they dropped down from a championship, And I'm going to say at Sixfields, Northampton win this one by 2-0. Peterborough United versus Blackpool, a relegation 6-pointer if ever there was one. Peterborough 3 points from safety, Blackpool 4 points from safety, 23rd and 24th respectively. Let's be brutally honest here. I'm surprised for one that Duncan Ferguson still at Peterborough? Darren Ferguson rather, not Duncan Ferguson, I think. But Darren Ferguson is still at the club. They did stack Steve Bruce, didn't they, Blackpool? And I think they appointed a successor this week, yes, in Ian Evatt, which is a very good managerial appointment. They did that on the 21st of October, so that's since the last time I made this video. And Ian Evatt, we know, is a real strong manager. He spent 5 years at Bolton Wanderers, 2 years at Barrow before that. Everywhere, he's a decent sort of manager. He does do a bit of a attacking-based formation, really. He does have that sort of attacking outlet, really. So, in fact, when he led Barrow, I've just found out his team was nicknamed Barrow-Salona because of that. And he had a decent win percentage with both teams, 44.44% with Barrow and 49.81% with Blackpool. He earned promotion from National League with Barrow. He earned promotion from League 2 with Bolton. Won the EFL Trophy with Bolton. Has reached the playoff. I think it was even the playoff final with Bolton at one point. So certainly a good manager to have at Blackpool. But I do think Peterborough have won their last game. Have been looking a bit better in the last 5 games or so, where they finally picked up some wins. 3 wins in the last 5. Blackpool haven't won at all in the last 5. 5-1 to Peterborough, a real sobering entrance for Ian Evatt to have. So, yeah, I mean, this could be bad for either side. Reading versus Doncaster Rovers. I think Reading a bit disappointing in terms of how their season started compared to last season, isn't it? Being mired in a relegation battle. They have looked better a bit since. They won the last game and only lost once in the last 6. Against Doncaster, who haven't won in the last 6. I do think we're going to see a Reading win in this one. Doncaster's euphoric start to the season isn't looking likely to continue. 4-1 to Reading. Stevenage versus Bradford City. Stevenage and Bradford are both really good at the moment. Both on 25 points, 2nd and 3rd respectively. Bradford have played one more game, but if either of these teams get promoted, I'd be happy because that would be a huge upset and provide some new faces into the Championship. I know Bradford were at one point in the 2nd tier, but it feels a very long time ago now, doesn't it? Bradford are unbeaten in the last 5. Stevenage's unbeaten run came to an end last game that they played in the league. But before that, were equally incredible. I think an end-to-end exciting game, 3-2 to Bradford City. But certainly one to watch. Wycombe Wanderers versus Huddersfield Town. Huddersfield are 5 points off the playoffs. I think there's a little bit of disappointment maybe creeping into Huddersfield that they just can't get consistently into that playoff position. Lee Grant as manager, I didn't really know what to expect coming into it, and he sort of just ended up doing the same of what Huddersfield did last season. Wycombe have been beaten last 3, but they've been involved in a relegation zone for a lot of it, so much so that I think they changed their manager, if I remember rightly, to Michael Duff, and things have improved since that point. I'm going to go with a 1-0 though to Huddersfield. I just think, Huddersfield, a decent side. They will be looking for playoffs. They need to get them a couple of losses that they've had behind them. On to League 2. We have got Cheltenham versus Walsall in this one, which you would normally say instantly, yeah, Walsall are going to win this one. They're currently top of the league on 26 points. Cheltenham just above relegation zone by 2 points in 22nd. But Cheltenham have beaten them last 3 and have looked a bit stronger of late. Walsall did lose their unbeaten run in the last game, and I think this could be a 2-2 draw. We know Walsall, unfortunately, have a bottle in them, which means that they just can't consistently stay at the top end of the table and end up slumping into the playoffs. Fleetwood versus Accrington Stanley in a Lancashire derby. Great to see this. Accrington Stanley are just about too good to be involved in the relegation scrap at the moment. But, I mean, them 4 teams beneath them, I think, are much more likely to. Because Accrington Stanley's defence is much better. They just need to start scoring a bit more. And maybe in this game they will, up against a Fleetwood side that is very mid-table. 5 wins, 4 draws, 4 losses, and I'm going to go with a draw in this one. Another 2-2 draw, a local derby, a lot of pride at stake, so there'll be a lot of hefty tackles, I imagine, as well. Barrow versus Barnet. Barrow are unbeaten in the last 5, which is amazing. Barnet did have an unbeaten run of 5 games, but lost in their last game. Really hard to say because both of these 2 teams are fantastic in spells and awful in other parts. I think home advantage could ring out this one, and Barrow's a difficult place to get to from Barnet. 2-1 to Barrow, continuing their unbeaten run. On to Bromley versus Milton Keynes Dons. MK Dons currently sitting 3rd in the automatic positions. 4 wins on the bounce for Paul Warren's side. He was heavily backed. It's not too surprising. Bromley, hard to place your finger on. Some weeks they're good. Some weeks they're absolutely terrible. I think we could see a draw in this one. 1-1 draw in this game. We've got Crawley Town versus Bristol Rovers. Crawley are a team embroiled in a relegation battle. They've not won in the last 5. They've now dropped into the relegation zone. Again, probably one of them teams that will be embroiled in that relegation zone battle all season. Maybe just manage to crawl themselves out of that mess. I need to stop doing these puns. But they are hosting Bristol Rovers, who have lost the last 3 games in a row. They've really looked like the spark that they had has disappeared. And I'm going to go with a 1-0 win for Crawley, a lesser spotted win for the Sussex side, having only got 2 this season. But I think now would be a good time to play Bristol Rovers, especially at home as well. Crewe Alexandra versus Grimsby Town. Crewe a bit inconsistent. 2 losses, 2 wins, 2 losses. So they are on for another 2 wins in a row if that form is to continue. And they are hosting up against the Grimsby Town side, who are 4th. They've been looked at stages as if they're a side who would be comfortably promoted, but at other sides just do not. Scoring 25 is an impressive amount to score, and conceding 15 is quite low, but that's a bit what's dragging them down a bit at the moment, I'd say. But yeah, I'd certainly say Grimsby overall, I would say, is a side who should be in that automatic zone along with Milton Keynes Dons. They're the 2 which at the moment I would be really comfortable with saying this about. Crewe, I'm going to go with a 2-0 win, Mo, because I just think there's a little bit of inconsistency getting into the Grimsby side, and therefore might start falling away a bit. I don't think they've got the longevity at this present time to manage to see that out completely. And I think, Crewe, if they get a win, could end up in the playoffs if games go their way. Chillingham versus Salford, both on 22 points, 57th. Both have had a bit of inconsistent displays over the last sort of 4 games or so. Not looking as much as a team which would be in a playoff fight as they should be. I'm going to go at Priestfield. Gillingham's home advantage might ring true. I'm going to go a cagey 1-0 win for Gillingham. Both of these sides will be wanting to put behind some bad form and get some wins under their belt and further their ascent up the table. Harrogate Town versus Newport County. This will invariably have a huge dependency on whether Newport get relegated or not, I would say, because Harrogate have lost the last 3 games in a row. Newport did win a game a couple of games ago now. They lost the last one. And I think if Newport want to stay up, they need to win this. And unfortunately, I don't think they're going to. I think Harrogate will win this one by 1-0. I think Newport could be in real danger this season. It's utterly beyond me that Newport have decided to keep the faith with David Hughes at the moment. Absolutely ridiculous position to be in. His win percentage at the moment is 17.65%. He's last time he was a manager before that was with Barry Town in 2004. It's a hugely weird appointment that they made in the first place. I'm confused and baffled by that, but we'll move on. Notts County versus Cambridge United. 8th versus 9th. Both are a point off the playoffs, and both will be desperately wanting to seize this one so that they can almost definitely get in the playoffs, whoever wins this game. I'm going to edge out a 1-0 Cambridge in this one, partly because I don't like teams from Nottinghamshire and partly because I think Cambridge are the better team. On to Oldham Athletic versus Shrewsbury Town. We have an interesting one here. Oldham are very inconsistent. They're probably teetering towards the bottom of this mid-table pack at the moment. And Shrewsbury have got 3 games unbeaten now, and they've slowly managed to get themselves out of their early season distress. Whether that continues, I'm not too sure at present. They may do, they may not do. I think Oldham are the better of the 2 teams in terms of in defence categorically, but they've both scored the same amount in 10, but Oldham have conceded half as many, with Shrewsbury conceding 20 and Oldham conceding 10. But I think Shrewsbury, considering they've got on a form, we'll have to back them with this one. 2-1 to Shrewsbury Town. It makes Oldham start slipping into a position that they don't want to be in, of a relegation battle. Swindon Town versus Colchester United. Now, Colchester United have got 3 wins on the bounce. Swindon do not have that, but they do have themselves in second place, and are one of the better sides in the league, you would say. They're the 3rd best in terms of goals scored at 24, but they're conceding 19 does ring alarm bells and a little bit of concern. I think this will be an end-to-end exciting game. 3-2 to Swindon Town. They could go top of the league if that is the case. Tranmere Rovers versus Chesterfield. Chesterfield are such an odd team. They have got occasionally in them an absolute rotter, and I think this is going to be one of them. It makes no sense because Tranmere have only just won a game, and before that had 5 games without a win. It would be totally characteristic of Chesterfield to lose this one, and I'm going to go with a 4-0 win for Tranmere Rovers because Chesterfield are such an odd team to predict that you just don't know where you're placing them week from week. On to the National League. FC Halifax Town versus York City. Another one of them at Yorkshire derbies that I was talking about at the start of this episode. York in 6th, decent playoff challenging side, as you would probably expect for a side which almost claimed the title last season. They're travelling to Halifax, who just lost a game, but before that had 5 wins in a row. They were doing a really good job. But that may have lost them a bit of confidence, that loss, and therefore I think York will win this one by 2-1. Braintree Town versus Altrincham. Altrincham have finally, interestingly enough, got rid of Phil Parkinson. It took a lot of guts to do that. He was a manager for a long time at this point. And it must be said, I do agree with the decision. I think a bit of a fresh managerial change, they've not announced it yet, but a fresh managerial change is what was really needed. They were in a position that it looked very untenable. They hadn't won a game in last. Okay, they were above relegation zone. Maybe I would have held on out of loyalty factors a bit longer, but this is a huge game. No matter which way you look at it, this is a huge game, and they cannot lose this Ultimate Jump. Otherwise, they will be in relegation zone, unless, of course, they get a draw. Well, no, if they lose this, basically, they are in relegation zone. Or if they, it's just a must not lose, if not must win. And I just think that Braintree are going to win it. They're slightly better on form. Not much to go on, I must say. But 2-0 to Braintree. They're an odd side that always seem to find themselves out of danger. I actually don't want Braintree to be relegated because you know what that means if Braintree get relegated. I can almost categorically say that Braintree, if they got relegated, would be in the National League North. Would they be? I think they would be because they're further north than Oxford and they're further north than Merthyr. So yeah, I think Braintree, if they got relegated, would be put in the National League North and they would switch either Merthyr or Oxford to the National League South, which may not be the worst thing, but obviously Braintree is also hopefully far south, and you would rather Oxford. I think you can be relegated at this point. They're looking quite poor, and I think we want it to be a bit more balanced. We don't want teams in Essex being in the National League North. That is an absolutely ridiculous thing to even consider happening. FA, sort it out. So yeah, Braintree 2-0. Eastleigh versus Morecambe. Morecambe won a game in the last one, really quite comfortably, actually. They beat Boston. Was it 4-0? Yeah, 4-0. Considering everything, they've scored 20 goals, which is quite decent, but they can say he did 39. They're a side that is really hard to predict week by week because they'll suddenly come out with this most random performance beating Morecambe. They're up against an Eastleigh side, which predictably is in 12th. We know they're a mid-table side. They always have been, and for a long-term future are looking likely to be still. I'm going to go with a 0-0 draw in this one. You know what? Getting that'd be 4 points in 2 games. That will be 2 points a game in the last 2 games. It builds that confidence up. It makes them have a bit more belief. It suddenly starts making things look a bit better, doesn't it? And, that positivity might start making them think that maybe they won't be relegated this season. Forest Green Rovers versus Boreham Wood. Now, this is a fascinating game because Boreham Wood have somehow managed to find themselves in second place in the table. Truly astounding achievement. I was astonished, quite frankly, to see them doing it so well. And so many games unbeaten at the moment, I can't even count. Forest Green Rovers have lost the last 2. However, I do think at home, Forest Green Rovers are still a decent side, and I think they do have in them potential to beat. Thing is, for the last couple of games, they look like they would struggle to reach the playoffs. But we also know in their locker that they have a capability to challenge for the title, which is really difficult. I'm going to 2-0 Forest Green Rovers, which would put an end to Boreham Wood's unbeaten run. And that would be their second loss of the season. Only Scunthorpe and Boreham Wood have lost once this season, by the way. I just seen that. We got 2 really long away journeys as well to predict. And the first, which I think will be the longest away journey of all time in football, and I think will likely forevermore be a record of Gateshead versus Truro City. That is an astronomically long way to go. And I think Truro will have to come away with something. They've picked up 4 points in the last 2 games. Gateshead are so hit and miss. I actually think they may get involved in a relegation battle by some of the performances you look at. They've conceded 32 goals but scored 22 as well, which is it's just so baffling. I'm going with a 0-0 draw, which makes zero sense in some regards, but I think Truro will be battling to make sure that they don't get a disappointment having gone so far. Hartlepool United versus Solihull Moors. Hartlepool, I think, Solihull have begun to look a bit better since a shake-up on manager. But now have a relegation zone. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw. Hartlepool haven't won a game in the last 4. It's looking more and more unlikely, I'd say, that they'd be able to make the playoffs. Purely on the base, they don't concede a lot. They've only conceded 13, but they don't score a lot either. Only scoring 16 isn't quite enough on such a position that it's almost only scoring 1 goal a game at this point, and that is a really poor position to be in. So yeah, a 1-1 draw. Scunthorpe United versus Aldershot Town. I'm going to go with an unlikely draw, but I think it'll be quite an end-to-end one. We know Aldershot love an end-to-end performance. Scoring 28, conceding 33. Absolutely wild. Scunthorpe score a fair few, scoring 26. Conceded a lot less, 13. But I think we're going to go with a 3-3 draw, a completely baffling, random end-to-end draw in this one. And it will be the 3rd draw in a row for Scunthorpe. Southend United versus Brackley Town. 3 games unbeaten for Southend as they find themselves in 7th place. Vastly superior goal difference. If it ended like this now, this was like final game of the season, the goal difference is a healthy one to have at that of a plus 12. They are looking to me more than likely to continue challenging for the playoffs. They're up against a Brackley Town team which haven't won a game in the last 4. They look comfortable at this level. They just need to score, which they just can't do. But they've only conceded 13. I think this has got a 0-0 draw written all over it. Wealdstone versus Sutton United. I think Wealdstone are a really difficult team to place your finger on because normally you'd expect them to be in a relegation battle, but this time around they're in a much more mid-table position. Again, quite one of the more end-to-end based teams in the division. They score about 1.5 goals a game, I think it is, but also concede about that as well. Sutton are honking up the gaff. They've got 9 points. They've only won once all season. But I think we could begin to see a little bit of a change in this one. Why do I say this? Well, I'm saying this because, by the way, I've just suddenly realised that there's several sackings that we've said. So Simon Grayson was sacked at Hartlepool. I don't think that's going to change the result, but that's an interesting move to have. Tommy Woodrington resigned from Aldershot. I knew about that. I don't think that's going to change too much in football. Okay. It was, yes, but Sutton United did bring in Chris Agruta, who hasn't seemed to have had a huge impact, let's say. But I think Sutton win this one. I really do. I think it could be a bizarre win, but it's a Greater London derby. A 1-0 win for Sutton United. Wealdstone aren't the side that I think will be able to carry on going in mid-table during the whole of the season. I just don't see that. So yeah, on to the next one. Woking versus Rochdale. Everybody will be saying in this, Rochdale are bound to win. Almost categorically. They've only lost twice all season. They've got 11 wins. They've been really good. Let's just say that Woking are a thorn in so many people's sides. They don't even do that well. Typically, they tend to be around about 18th, but they just are annoying. They're a really annoying team to play against for them topper end teams. And I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw, which, if you're a Woking fan, do let me know. Do you think that stereotype is an apt stereotype that I give it? But I think from the basis of an outsider looking in, it does seem a bit like that. Another long away day that I alluded to earlier was Yeovil Town versus Carlisle United. Yeovil are in mid-table. They have good runs. They have bad runs. It's sometimes great to watch, sometimes horrendous to watch. It's really hard to tell. I think we're just going to see them. Carlisle got 3 wins in a row, but we know that there's a raw underbelly to Carlisle that sometimes can be a bit exploited. We'll go with a 0-0 draw. A really odd one to predict, though, because you don't know how laggy the Carlisle fans will be having travel to Yeovil. We just don't know. Tamworth versus Boston United. Now, Boston it's a really difficult one. They're either going to be a side that 4-0 they'll put down to a disgraceful performance, forget it, and move on, and have a mindset shift, and continue the good run that they had beforehand, or it starts unravelling, and that's the real danger because Boston do have a tendency to have a bit of an unravel in them, and Tamworth are unbeaten in so many games, and I'm going to have to back Tamworth in this one. I think Boston might start an unravelling, which is not a great time to start one. 3-0 to Tamworth. On to the National League North, AFC Telford United versus Workshop Town. In terms of this one, it's difficult. Worksworth are very mid-table. They don't win a lot of games of late, but at the same time, they're a side that have somehow managed to get themselves in mid-table. So they've clearly got some sort of quality compared to Telford, which in a relegation battle, probably they're 3 points above relegation zone. But I would argue on the actual underlying statistics, they've both scored 18, but Telford have conceded 3 goals less than Worksop. I'm going with a 0-0 draw. I don't think Telford will be relegated. I don't think Worksop will. I think both of these will just end up a bit mid-table. Buxton versus Alfreton Town. This is fascinating. Jake Buxton is travelling to Buxton in his, 3rd game in charge? It's one of the Buxtons are going to win. I'm sorry, I'll stop doing Jake Buxton jokes on that behalf. But Alfreton are going to be struggling. I really think so. The lack of firepower is apparent, only scoring 9 goals, which is the least amount of goals scored this season, conceding 22, which is joint second worst with Peterborough Sports and Worksop Town. Third, I think. Sorry, joint. It'll be joint third because I think Merthyr have got a. Well, it is joint second, I suppose, but also joint third. Yeah, but anyway, essentially, Alfreton are struggling. They're in the sticks. And Buxton are in the playoffs. They're unbeaten in the last 5, got 4 wins in 5. You got to back Buxton to win this one. 3-2 to Buxton at home as well at the Silverlands. I really want Buxton to finish in the playoffs. I don't want Alfreton relegated. I really don't. And I hope dearly that they stay up because I've seen too many Derbyshire teams be relegated already in recent history. Saw Matlock in midweek a few nights ago. And yes, they're looking on the up now, but having seen how poor they were last season, I don't want another one of them situations happening. But yeah, 3-2 to Buxton. Chester versus Bedford Town. A lot of draws, Chester. A lot of draws. How does it feel? I mean, they did win in the last one before. I had 5 draws in a row. I think they were going for a record at one point. But yeah, Bedford, they've only lost once in the last 5. I think this is going to be another draw week. It's draws galore for Chester. We'll go with a 0-0 draw. Chorley versus Merthyr Town. Chorley haven't won in the last 4, but you do look at them. They are a side that have got themselves into the playoffs. And I think they scored 28, which is a decent amount. Conceded 20, which is quite poor. But they are a side that should be reaching the playoffs. The quality they have in their side, the normality that they have, they really should do. And Merthyr haven't also won in the last 4. In fact, we've had 3 losses in the last 4. I think Chorley do win this one. It's not going to be the most entertaining game. A 1-0 win for Chorley. Curzon Ashton versus Peterborough Sports. Curzon Ashton, an interesting one. I think at the moment, out of the teams not in the playoffs, they may be the side most likely to make the playoffs because they are slightly more consistent than Macclesfield and Kidderminster Harriers at present, but only by marginal things. They've scored a few more goals, 19, and conceded roughly the same, 17. They are up against the Peterborough Sports side, who are fighting for their lives. They are looking like a team that I think would probably end up being relegated, conceding 22 goals, only scoring 10. It's not pretty. They're not even scoring a goal a game now. They're conceding 2 goals a game. Yeah. I go with a 1-1 draw, though. I think there's a reason Curzon Ashton aren't in the playoffs, and that's the lack of consistency. Darlington versus Southport. Southport are horrendous. I'm going to be real with you. They are a side that they just can't gather a run together. And I think even though Darlington are not on the greatest run of form themselves, Southport need to win this, but I think Darlington 100% will do. Darlington winning this one 3-0. Next. AFC Fylde versus Hereford. Now, Fylde are a very good team. They are currently second, but they do have an occasional weakness in them. It's for conceding 16 and scoring 33. They are a truly giant, but they're just not as good as South Shields at the moment, and I don't suspect that they would be, considering how good South Shields are at present, I must say. I think Hereford, slightly poor from them this season compared to where they were last season. Probably looking downwards more than upwards. They would not want to be dragged into relegation zone, but may end up in their typical mid-table. It's a very compact mid-table at the moment. There's 1 point between 10th and 15th at the moment, so there's a lot of teams in that pack. I'm going to go for a 3-1 Hereford win. I think Hereford could be a team to exploit the weaknesses of Fylde. Kidderminster Harriers versus Spennymoor Town. Spennymoor did lose them last one, but they had 4 wins in a row before that and are looking at a solid team. Their defence could do with some improvement. Conceding 21 is a concern, and scoring 22, okay, all right. But in terms of if they can keep a consistent performance, could this be the year that they get playoffs? I don't know. It's probably too early to say. And I think if you look at it right now, I think Spennymoor is probably the most likely team to drop out of the playoffs, just on the basis that they score less than a lot of the teams around them and concede more than the teams around them. Kidderminster, however, I would not vouch as a team to replace them, considering they've only scored 16 and conceded 17. I'm going to go Spennymoor to win this one. 3-1 to Spennymoor Town. Kidderminster may actually miss out on the playoffs this season, which would be a huge shock, and probably should have shown that they should have stuck with Phil Brown a bit longer. Are we really that surprised? It was such a silly thing to do, wasn't it? Well, he is now at Peterborough Sports, actually, Phil Brown, isn't he? Which is a right coup, by the way, for Peterborough Sports to do. Kings Lynn Town versus Radcliffe. Radcliffe are unbeaten in a long time. They scored 30, which is the second best in the league, conceded 15. They are a really strong team, Radcliffe. They really are. Now, Kings Lynn normally are. They're not so much anymore. They've only won 3 times this season. Not one in a very long time, but they've had 5 draws. They're quite a draw specialist, and I think we could get a draw in this one. A 1-1 draw. It continues Radcliffe's unbeaten run, okay, but it will come as a bit of a disappointment, I'm sure, for the Greater Manchester-based side. Right, I think South Shields' unbeaten run over the course of the season is coming to an end. I know South Shields have done well so far, but I think Macclesfield could be it. They have invested a lot, Macclesfield. They've won the last 2 games in a row. Okay, that's not a lot compared to how many South Shields seem to be winning this season. But yeah, I'm going to go with maybe what seemed unlikely, but I don't think it would have done at the start of the season. 5-0 win for Macclesfield. You do occasionally get that sort of result, don't you? Oxford City versus Leamington. I alluded to earlier how I thought Oxford were very poor. They have only picked up 1 point in the last 6. That is why I'm saying that. Now, Leamington have also only picked up 1 point in the last 6, and both are in a heap of trouble. This is a real relegation 6-pointer. There's 4 points separating these two teams. I think Leamington do just about take this one. I think defensively, there's a lot of fragilities within Oxford's side. 2-1 to Leamington, but it could really go either way, and Oxford City desperately need a win, as do Leamington. Scarborough Athletic versus Marine. Scarborough, a really strong side. Now, they have lost the last couple of games, but before that were absolutely immense. They were on a great run of form. Up against Marine side that are very mid-table, I think may fall down a lot further. I think under the underbelly of them, they're not very good, only scoring 13, conceding 21. To be mid-table with that sort of stats, they're very lucky at the moment. Scarborough, I think, will win 4-1. Fairly comfortable win for the Yorkshire side. ASC Towton versus Chelmsford City. Well, Towton, I must confess, are doing miles better than I thought. They are currently 4th in the table, doing a very good job. Okay, maybe there are some aspects they could improve on, but maybe that's sort of the case with everybody at the end of the day. Chelmsford in 15th, very mid-table. I think there's a bit of a disappointment growing around Chelmsford, maybe. I'm going to go in this one a 0-0 draw. Just think Chelmsford could grind a result out in this one. Right, Dagenham and Redbridge need to beat Chippenham. Chippenham are the worst team in the league at the moment. Maybe I ended up cursing them at one point, saying what it's meant to be a mid-table side, because now they're in a relegation fight and a really difficult one to get out of. They're currently 5 points adrift. They are rather in the absolute mud, it would seem. And you know what? I think it's going to be a 0-0 draw. Dagenham and Redbridge are just not a side that fills me with confidence at this precise moment in time. I've backed them before. I can't back them any further. Dorking Wanderers versus Torquay United. Dorking are in 13th. They are very mid-table, which is a very strange thing to see Dorking be. You normally either see Dorking at the top of the National League South or in the relegation zone of the National League. So I think we can all agree in this one. It's a really weird position that we are finding ourselves in. That you're seeing a Dorking in the mid-table. When have they ever been mid-table? And I think this is their first proper mid-table side since they were since their inception in the 1990s. Torquay, as you would predict, are in the top 3. They'll be challenging all the way, I imagine. Yeah, I'm going to go with a 1-0 Torquay United. I don't think it's too surprising that they're going to win. I don't think it'll be a breeze, but I think they will win. Eastbourne Borough versus Chesham United. So Tommy Woodrington came into Eastbourne, which does seem a very interesting move to move from Aldershot to Eastbourne, which seems to me a very much step down from one relegation battle to another, but between one league and another as well. Maybe he thinks he can become a hero at Eastbourne, which certainly was not the case with Matt Gray, was it? Who, let's face it, was an interesting appointment anyway. But yes, they are up against Chesham at present, and they are Chesham are much better than Eastbourne at the moment. They are mid-table though, and I think we could see something from Eastbourne here. I would suspect Tommy Woodrington to get a result in his first game. We'll go with a 1-1 draw in this one. Ebbsfleet United versus Salisbury. Salisbury have won their last 2 games, and I think we could see another win for the Wiltshire-based side. Ebbsfleet, they're still not looking 100% in every single game. I don't think they'll necessarily get promoted in this season. I don't think they'll be relegated either. I think a mid-table season, which might just suit the Kent side down to a T. 2-1 to Salisbury in this one. Farnborough versus Maidenhead United. interesting one to think about, isn't it? Maidenhead have that amazing run of form that's slightly cracked a bit now, and therefore I think this is the ideal time for Farnborough to get a result. Farnborough are a team in the relegation zone as well, so it would be a bit of a steal, but I think at home we're going to maybe see a smash and grab, a 1-0. You don't normally get a smash and grab at home, but I do think it might be the case. 1-0 to Farnborough. Out of all the teams in the relegation zone at the moment, I think they are the most likely to get themselves out of it because they have scored 17. They have conceded 23, which is horrendous. But in terms of scoring-wise, they're doing a much better job in about half the league. So they could probably get themselves out of the sticks if they need to be. Hemel Hempstead Town versus Bath City. Bath are struggling. Hemel Hempstead are doing quite a good job. So is it any surprise if I would say that Hemel Hempstead to win this one? And I think they'll win it by 4-2. I think Hemel Hempstead are on the track to getting a playoff finish, which I was not expecting. I'll be brutally honest. It's one of them ones that really caught me by surprise. Hornchurch versus Hampton and Richmond Borough. Hornchurch are on a lengthy unbeaten run of 12 games. They're actually invincible. Now, a fair few of them are draws, 4 of them are draws, but they are a fantastic side altogether. Hampton Richmond Borough have lost the last 3 in a row, but they did have a decent start to the season. They was at one point looking at playoff likely. Not so much anymore, but I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw, another draw for Hornchurch. They've had 3 in the last 5 games. Their ability to win games is becoming as sparse as their ability to draw games, as in their abilities to lose is not there at the moment, but they are still very much prone to a draw or two. Horsham versus Enfield Town. I will stop talking about whatever I was just talking about, which was just utter nonsense, I feel. But yes, Horsham are 1 point off the playoffs. I think they're actually looking more likely to get it. Unbeaten in the last 4. They've scored 18, conceded 15, so they've scored 3 more goals more than Maidstone. This could be an interesting one if they manage to get edge out over Enfield, who are a very 50-50 side at the best of times. Only scoring 11 is not looking good, but conceding 16 is, again, one of them ones that probably means that they have a bit of a safety cushion. I do think this is roughly right for where they are right now. They're 18th. 3 wins, 3 draws, and 6 losses. Those 3 wins came in the last 6 games, so they've certainly improved over the last 3 weeks. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw, which, I don't think will be too bad result for Enfield. They just need to carry on getting results. Slough Town versus Maidstone United. Talking about Maidstone, who are a team just above Horsham, they're also unbeaten in the last 4. And I think that run could potentially come to an end. Slough are very inconsistent. They're a bit like the Enfield that we've just spoken about. They conceded 25 but scored 16. I'm going to go with just a 1-0 draw. I think Slough Town just need to go back to basics, and I think they will stay up. Ultimately, they just at the moment don't overly seem to be doing that. Tunbridge Angels versus Weston-super-Mare. Weston-super-Mare do have the odd poor result in them, but they have been, by and large, absolutely fantastic this season. Conceding only 9 goals in 12 games. They were decent. That's 0.75 goals a game. Conceded, scored 23. So, again, a very over 2 goals a game scored at this rate. It's a very good position to be in. However, Tunbridge Angels, I think, they're a team which you would expect Weston-super-Mare to be able to beat. And for that reason, may have a bit of a turn off the rate. A bit like how Matlock were expected to beat Blythe and did a horrendous job. Tunbridge Angels to win this one, 2-0. Worthing versus Dover Athletic. Worthing being back taken over by Adam Hinshelwood. Dover Athletic, draw specialist, it seems, at the moment, with 5 draws in the last 6 games. Yeah, I think this could be quite an exciting end-to-end game, actually. I think Worthing do win this one, but I think I'm going to go with a 6-4 Worthing win. What a game we have on our hands. An absolute cracker. It's too early for a Christmas cracker, but an absolute cracker nonetheless. AFC Bournemouth versus Forest. We hate Forest, we do. We wish them to be relegated. And they're in relegation zone, so hurrah, they. And I want Bournemouth to confine that misery. And considering they're unbeaten in quite a long time now, they've only lost once all game, I think Bournemouth very quietly, very carefully getting along with what they're doing. And I think they could absolutely smash Forest to the dirt. 5-0 to Bournemouth in this one. Arsenal versus Palace. It's an interesting one. I think at stages, Palace have looked like a side that could well and truly challenge for Champions League. Then they have an odd, poorer performance, shall we say. They've had 4 draws in their opening 8 games. So half the games they've drawn. They've only had 1 loss, though. I'm just going to have to say it right now. I think it's going to be another draw. A 2-2 draw, which Arsenal will not particularly want. But, does anyone actually think this is Arsenal's year? I'll be interested to hear that viewpoint in the comment section down below. But I think Arsenal are actually looking not too bad. Aston Villa versus Manchester City. Manchester City and beating the last 5. But we know they also have a bit of a fragile underbelly. And Aston Villa are unbeaten the last 5, 3 wins in a row, as well as Manchester City. So I think we could see Villa win this one. I'm going to go 2-1 to Aston Villa at Villa Park. Which suddenly propels them up into a Champions League battle. That's how close and still early in the season it is. Wolverhampton Wanderers versus Burnley. Relegation 6-pointer, almost certainly, yes. 5 points separating these two teams. I think Wolves need to win this one if they have any hope of staying up. They have not won in any of their opening 8 games, but I think it might change here at Molineux. 2-0 to Wolverhampton Wanderers. Everton versus Tottenham Hotspur. It's an interesting one, Tottenham, because I just don't realistically see them managing to maintain a full European charge all season. But some of the performances produced this season would imply that they should be in the Champions League positions, considering how good some of their games be. But the reason is that there is an adjective called Spursy, which means that they cannot possibly do so. They're up against an Everton side who are decent on their day with David Moyes. I'm going to go 3-2 to Everton. You can't ever truly predict a game, though, could you? Port Vale versus Stockport County. I'm going to go with a against the odds game, actually, in this one. Port Vale to win 1-0. I know Stockport are in the playoffs at the moment. But yeah, I think Darren Moore's side could do a decent number and make a bit of an odd one. On to some EFL Cup games. I know we love this competition. We really do. It's a very 50-50 competition for some people, but I do enjoy it. I think it provides a good opportunity for an upset. And look, the first one predicting Grimsby Town versus Brentford is a prime one for the case. Grimsby have already slain the Red Devil himself from Manchester United. So they'll be buoyed on at home as well. It will be almost sellout, I would imagine, at Blundell Park up against Brentford. I do have to say that I'm going to edge a 1-0 win for Brentford. It's just one of them things that I think Brentford will actually quite like a trophy at some point in their history, and this could be the season. Wycombe Wanderers versus Fulham. I think almost certainly Fulham to win this one. 2-0 to Fulham. And I'm not expecting a lot of upsets, but one of the ones I might expect is Cardiff to beat Wrexham, because Wrexham are in a bit of mud. Cardiff are doing very well, and I think they're going to get themselves into the hat in the next round. 3-1 to Cardiff City in this Welsh derby. They're both Welsh teams. Okay, don't come at me. Bradford City versus Lincoln City in League One. I think Lincoln could win this one. This is going to be an interesting one, because both of these teams are very good on their day. 3-0 to Lincoln City, though. Mansfield Town versus Plymouth Argyle. I forgot to last week to predict the flipping Southwest Derby. I didn't realise it was going to be on a Thursday night. Who the flip is in charge of that scheduling? Anyway, I think Plymouth will win this one. 1-0 to Plymouth Argyle as they travel to Mansfield. Accrington Stanley versus Tranmere Rovers in League 2, I think could be a fairly end-to-end game. 3-3. Both of these are going to try and avoid being in a relegation battle, I think, this season. We've got some EFL Trophy games to predict. What an absolute joy. I know you are all here just to watch me go through these. Some of these games are actually pointless. We're going to start with Barrow versus Nottingham Forest under-21s. This is one of them pointless games. Neither of these two teams can actually get promoted, right? Or through to the next round. Forest have had 1 point. Barrow have had 0 points. They've both been horrendous. I think Forest will probably edge this one out, the under-21s, 2-1. But at the end of the day, the game doesn't matter. It is, quite frankly, a ridiculous format of a tournament. Rotherham United versus Manchester City's under-21s. This one does matter. They are both on 3 points, and therefore both of these two teams, if whoever wins this is, I would say, almost will get promoted. Whoever wins this gets through to the next round. I don't like saying promoted. I'll keep on saying promoted, but it's not promoted. And I think in this one, 5-0 to Rotherham United. I don't like the fact it's even got under-21 teams in the first place. And so seeing Rotherham go through to the next round would be much better in my eyes. Exeter City versus Arsenal's under-21s. Arsenal have been top of the league. I think at this point, they've got 2 games to play, but I think they are through pretty much. It ultimately depends if Exeter manage to win this one. They then suddenly make the group wide open, I suppose, and all down to the final day. And I think Arsenal under 21s, though, do win this one by 5-0. I just think Arsenal under 21s are one of the better under 21s there are. Cheltenham Town versus Tottenham Hotspurs under 21s. This is going to be another interesting one, if I can find it yet. Because actually, sorry, it's not another interesting one. This is not an interesting one. This is one of the ones which doesn't matter because neither of these teams can get promoted. Again, another stupid thing of this tournament. Basically, a meaningless friendly. 3-0 to Tottenham Hotspurs under 21s. I don't think Cheltenham will really bother to try. I think they'll play as many reserves as they can do. Feasibly within the competition's rules. Walsall versus Chelsea's under 21s. Chelsea's under 21s need to win this in order to get any chance of promotion and win heavy. I don't think that's going to happen because Walsall also know that they can't lose. They preferably would want to win this in order to maintain promotion, but they just can't lose it. I'm going with a 1-1 draw, but I think Chelsea's under 21s. We'll go Chelsea's under 21s to win a point on penalties. Whether that will be enough for Walsall will remain to be seen. I ultimately think that will depend on the other game that we'll be having in a few weeks. Swindon Town versus West Ham United under 21s. This is an interesting one. Swindon have only played 1 game and Reading have already played all 3. So if Swindon win this one, they go on the top of the table and will almost certainly be promoted. Even if they lose this one, they then have still got a chance to get back. Whereas West Ham basically have to win this in order to get through to the next round. And I think that will happen. I think West Ham in the 21s will win this one 3-2. Proper end-to-end one, which will then put it into if the rounds of possibility that Swindon Town will need to beat MK Dons by more than 2 goals to get promoted or get into the next round. Leyton Orient versus Aston Villa's under 21s. Leyton Orient are already through. Aston Villa's under 21s realistically need to win this by like I just don't think they can get promoted, actually, because I think Crawley are playing against Peterborough, and it doesn't matter, because even if whichever one wins that, gets through. So, yeah, this is also a useless game. 1-0 to Leyton Orient. Just continuing that good feeling, and I think a lot of Aston Villa's and the 21s will probably be saved up for other. Actually, no, Aston Villa aren't in the EFL Cup anymore, so maybe there's a reason to be playing for them ones. Luton Town versus Brighton Hove Albion under 21s. Amazing to think that Luton at one point were playing up against actual Brighton and Hove Albion not that long ago. It's a really odd one to think about. Yes, if Luton win this, they have pretty much confirmed that they are going to go through the next round. Essentially, for Barnet, they will be hoping that a draw happens in this game, and that Brighton Hove Albion wins the extra point on penalties, because they are currently on the top of the table, but not comfortably. I think Luton Town win this one 2-1 in this one, which will then put them on the top of the leaderboard, and will leave basically Brighton unable to win promotion, but Cambridge still having that option. Right, on to some National League North quickly. Curzon Ashton versus Kings Lynn. I think Kings Lynn win this one by 1-0. Cheeky win for the Linnets. Southport versus Peterborough Sports. This is a rearranged fixture, I think, which was meant to be played earlier in the season, and I think it's a relegation 6-pointer, and I think Southport win this one by 2-1. Dorking Wanderers versus Maidenhead United. I think Dorking do have to, at some point, click into gear and start challenging up the table. And I think it could start here. 3-0 to Dorking Wanderers. Dover Athletic versus Chelmsford City. We'll go 1-0 to Dover in this one. But it's going to be a cagey game, I think. I could go either way. And then in the EFL Cup, Arsenal versus Brighton Hove Albion. I think this was going to be a 1-1 draw, and Arsenal to go through on a penalty shootout. They will be wanting to win a trophy because they've not won a trophy in a while either, since that FA Cup. And just something for Arteta to ease the nerves a bit. Liverpool versus Palace. Well, we all know how much this rivalry is beginning to emerge now, isn't it? There was FA Cup Community Shields. There was, I think, Palace passed them in the FA Cup to get through to the final at one point. There was a interesting game earlier on. I think this is just going to be a 1-1 draw, but I think Palace to win on penalties, because we know Palace is loving a good cup run at this moment in time. Swansea City versus Manchester City. We'll go Manchester City to win this one by 3-1. I just can't see Swansea causing any form of upset in this one. Wolverhampton Wanderers versus Chelsea. Chelsea to win 6-2. And Newcastle United versus Tottenham Hotspur, which is on ITV. Newcastle are at St James's Park as well, and they are the holders of the EFL Cup. Tottenham Hotspur are the holders of the Europa League. I'm going to Newcastle to win this one 2-1. Thank you very much for watching. Please do leave your predictions down below. That'd be hugely appreciated. Please subscribe if you're new around here. Thanks for all the support on the shorts. We got about 5 new subscribers from there. But yes, thank you very much, and I'll see you all in the next one.